And are we going live on Facebook right now?
Do you want to go live right now itself?
Yeah, because the introduction of so would be.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. We'll do that.
sure. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Should I continue or wait for going on live on Facebook?
Just give a second. Just do that.
Okay, okay.
Can I have the Facebook Live link on the chat, please?
Yeah, I'm just sending it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we can start.
So, good evening, everyone. The topic for today's session is contracts and agreements for startups. We have Prakhar Dixit with us to host the session. Prakhar Dixit is an excellent transactional lawyer and a much sought after arguing counsel. Mr. Dixit graduated from Faculty of Law, University of Delhi and Jawaharlal Nehru University, and was trained at Grant Thornton, India, one of the largest fully integrated assurance tax and advisory firms. He practices in Supreme Court, High Courts, and tribunals with a particular focus on startup advisory, commercial litigation, corporate law, intellectual property, real estate, and property laws. Mr. Dixit is a counsel for UP government in Supreme Court of India and has been enlisted as top entrepreneur with the Department of Education, Government of NCT of Delhi. He's also a youth member of Singapore International Arbitration Center. So now I hand over the stage to Mr. Prakhar Dixit.
Namaskar to everybody. Welcome all. Thanks for joining this session. Thanks to Chanvi and Chandrika for managing this at such a short notice. So when we talk about this topic, everybody knows what a startup is, but then the technical framework has been changed in 2018. So according to a GSR 364E, a publication published by Government of India on 11th of April 2018, it defines a startup as some entity which is a private limited company or an LLP or a registered partnership firm. So this is very important to understand the difference between a registered and unregistered partnership firm. So just registering your partnership deed doesn't make it a registered partnership firm. You have to get your partnership registered under the section 59 of the Partnership Act 1932 by registrar of firms. So this is a fine difference. Apart from this, the whole company should not be more than 10 years old. And to top it all, I just shift to the next slide. Yeah. So to top it all, the turnover should not be more than 100 crores. And since it's incorporation, and it should be more bent towards innovation, development, or improvement of products or processes or services. And scalability model with a high potential of employment generation or wealth creation. Now, these are vaguely defined, the last point that I mentioned, but then overall, this should actually add something to the existing body of businesses that are already there. And then the terms defined earlier are very specific and are very tightly knit. So what kind of contracts or agreements can a startup actually need? Coming to that in the next slide, but these are actually not the very beginning. when a startup is registered, and as you have seen that it has to be registered as a partnership firm, which is a registered partnership firm, as an LLP, which is again a partnership firm limited by liability, and then or we have a private limited company. If we incorporate a private limited company, the first thing that we need is articles of association or memorandum of association. And a lot of people make these mistakes, not just the startups, even a lot of professionals make this mistake to get these documents vetted by a chartered accountant or to actually draft these documents by a chartered accountant, which is not suggested at all. See, chartered accountants or company secretaries are excellent when it comes to their own domain, which are basically taxation, accountancy, and Companies Act. But if it comes to vetting and legal compliances, one should, or a startup or the founders should always contact a lawyer. So what does Articles of Association or Memorandum of Association deal with? They talk about what kind of businesses the company will be involved in, what kind of business organization the company will deal in, what kind of fields the company will work in, and to top it all, what kind of duties and roles various directors or founders will play. Looking mostly, it doesn't look very important aspect if we come to it that it's just a memorandum of association or articles of association. But let's presume that the founders actually want to take in capital from, let's say, Singapore. And none of the clauses of articles of association or memorandum of association talk about taking capital from ashore. You will have to change both of them, and it's a tedious process. It not just takes money, it also takes time. And often registrar of companies, when you file an application to change these, reject them or ask frequently to change your applications. Coming to the second aspect of partnership deed, a partnership deed mostly involves very important aspects, not just of how a business has to be conducted, but also of how to share profits and losses. You see, till the time a company has money, mostly the partners do not end up having any kind of misunderstandings between themselves. But when the money is low, or let's say that the conditions are such like we are hitting in COVID, and let's say that we have, I'll tell you an incident. So a client came to me 2 months back and he said that he had invested almost ₹1 crore in a restaurant of a big franchisee he had taken. 50 lakh rupees were invested by two partners who were there. One, the partnership deed was registered, but it was not registered with the registrar of partnerships and companies. Second, that there was a clause, a small clause, which was there that the partnership can be dissolved at will. And the opposing partner after the restaurant got closed in COVID, did not take up to his liabilities. He just did not live up to it, and he did not pay any finances. And eventually he served a notice to my client and just said that I want to dissolve. The client came at a very ultimate moment to me, and I asked him who did actually draft your partnership deed, and he said that my accountant drafted it for me. And I said that you see that such a small clause like dissolution of partnership at will can have such wide ramifications. So deed for LLP, deed for partnerships, registered partnerships, as well as memorandum of association and articles of association should essentially be vetted, at least if not drafted by a properly trained commercial lawyers. This is the very beginning of the thing. So how do you go about it? A lot of startups keep on asking me this thing. So you see, when you approach a lawyer, you do not know what is the structure of an entity will be like, but then what you know is how will you share the profits and taxes, how will you share the work. That is mostly clear in the mind of a startup or startup founders. And you can possibly provide your a legal professional this thing, and then he will draft it according to you. One more thing, that no stone, it is not a stone set formula that this particular deed is used by this particular company, so it will fit you as well. So there's a lot of customization that happen in a memorandum of association, articles of association, even in deeds. So if any professionals, chartered accountants, taxation consultants tell you that This is the format that we have been using. Just understand that they are not capable of possibly vetting a document for you, which will give you a sound sleep post incorporating your company or post forming your partnership deed. So this was the very beginning. Now we come to what all agreements that you might need. Apart from the deeds that we have, which will again define your profit sharing percentages, you can have an internal agreement if you have not started your company yet and it is in the infancy and you have already rolled some kind of functions. What will this founders agreement, you can call it a memorandum of understanding between the founders as well. What will it have? So it will possibly define ownership, responsibilities of different founders, operations, who will handle what, and decision-making policies, because these are the key areas where disagreements might happen at a later stage. Now, coming to non-disclosure agreement, what is a non-disclosure agreement? Let's presume for a moment that you are actually dealing with a patented product which has been patented by one of the founders, or you are actually developing a product which might get patented at a later stage. So this might be a software or a medicine or some kind of product which you are patenting for making the life of humanity easier. So what you will like is that this idea should not get out till the time it is already patented and it's still on the drawing board. So patent also takes a lot of time. You fill in the application, it is vetted by the patent department, and then only once they are satisfied, they grant you a patent. So this is just done to protect the idea from being used by another person. So who can be the another people with whom you will sign NDAs, that are non-disclosure agreements? This can be your co-founders, this can be your workers, these can even be prospective investors. So any person with whom you share a novel idea, you can actually pitch in that you please sign a non-disclosure, and only then I will deal with my trade secrets with you. So yeah, coming to the third thing, so these are rent agreements. Now I will give you an example of how important rent or lease agreements are. There are a lot of people coming to me saying that there is no force majeure clause in their lease agreements or rent agreements, and during COVID they have not opened their offices for altogether 3-4 months. And a lot of legal startups are also facing a lot of problems because of these, because the rents are in above 1 lakh rupees or something, and closing down the office not just means that they do not have business, that also means that they have piling up liabilities. So clauses like force majeure, what happens when forces of major actually make your business inoperable? Let's presume for a moment that a founder is actually stuck in Hyderabad because of lockdown, and he any which way cannot open the office. What is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to pay the rent? Is he not supposed to pay the rent? How does he deal with the whole thing is contained in rent agreement, and it is very important that it is mentioned in very specific terms while you sign it. Coming to licensing agreements, so there are several licenses that you might be using. You might be using a product which is licensed, a software that is licensed, or you might be using a trademark of a company with which you have actually tied up for bolstering your image. So all these agreements have to be vetted properly and drafted properly before you come to a point where you can actually make it a scalable model. So yeah, now the other kind of fifth kind of agreement that we will talk about are vendor agreements. So who are your vendors? Let's presume that you, like I gave you an example of a restaurant. So the people who provide you vegetables, the people who provide you gas cylinders, the people who provide you fresh meat, or the people who provide you vegetable oils are all your vendors. And it's very important to have a tight-knit vendor agreement. Why? Because these are the people who will be providing you with the raw material on which your business will be scaled up and your business will work properly and you will have satisfied clients. For a more service-based industry, who are your vendors? So people who provide you papers, people who actually service your computers, or people even who provide you human resources are all your vendors. Now, 6 kind of contracts can be many. There can be employment contracts, investment contracts, protection of intellectual property, franchisee agreements, and all. So these are the basic kind of contracts that a proper startup founder might encourage. There might be encountered. There might be many more kind of contracts that he might come up to. Now, the second leg of my startup is basically seed funding and angel funding. So I'm sure that most of the people who are here are somehow somehow conversant with this language of seed funding. So this is the very nascent stage of funding, where in early growth stages, the founders do not want to raise the funding from big people, or so this is the first round investment basically. And then we come to the sources of seed funding for startups. So these are namely three. Since Chandrika has said that I have just 15 minutes, I'll try to wrap it up here as soon as possible. This is a rather long PPT. Yeah. So sources of seed funding for startups can be business revenue, personal savings, or bootstrapping, corporate seed funds. So most of the time, we come to seed funding contracts and agreements when you are using corporate seed funds. So sources of seed funding can be more like micro VCs, angel funds. Even these are included when you come to seed funding. So what are the first agreement that you will encounter when you go for seed funding is, because you are pitching an idea for people who are already in the industry and they know maybe your project as well. They are aware that you are doing good work. That's why you are sitting in front of the table with them. But then that doesn't mean that you will not actually bring across the table non-disclosure agreement. I will request, and a lot of startups with very good ideas make these mistakes, that they actually pitch in their idea over the phone or over any email or any medium in person without getting a non-disclosure agreement signed. I understand that it is a David versus Goliath. Sometimes you might not have the power. In such cases, you might even pitch in person that you are actually bound by non-disclosure, and even that will work. So an agreement doesn't always have to be in writing. It can be verbally communicated to the other party, and it will be as binding to the other party if you can prove that you have communicated it to the other party. So it doesn't have to be always dotted and signed. That is the best scenario. But then yes, even if you do not have that, you can have other ways of doing it. Coming to the second thing, so this is term sheet. I'm sure again that a lot of you are conversant with what is term sheet, but then so what is term sheet? It's a significant document that envelopes the deal. It's structured by clearly elucidating the terms of investment, including the price per share and pre-money and post-money valuation of the company. So when an investor wants to invest in your company, what are the things that he will like to know? He will like to know what is the valuation of your company right now. That includes revenue, assets, and everything. What will be the valuation post injecting the capital? 3, what is the valuation of the share pre-investment, and what will be the value of the share post-investment? So this is a term sheet. Most of the time when you, before the investment actually happens, what the investors want is that both the parties are on the same page in the term sheet. So once the investors are interested in your proposition, what they will ideally like you to do is to give them a term sheet. Then both of you will actually fine-tune the term sheet according to the conveniences, and then both the parties will sign a term sheet. So term sheet is also binding and can actually put you in a lot of fix at a later stage. Okay, coming to what is third point, that is business valuation report. So there's something called fair valuation of the shares of the company. So this fair valuation, we actually come at it with a set formula. Most of the chartered accountants know it. You can take the help of a chartered accountant while making a term sheet or a business valuation report. These are the professionals whom we usually use. So the higher a valuation of a company, the more lucrative it appears to potential seed investor. Okay, now the third, now under this we have many small things that I will deal with. So we have letter of intent. So what is letter of intent? Before you actually jump into a full-fledged relationships, it is letter of intent. So this is actually mentioning an investor makes a proposed investment in the startup. So this is like an investor says that I am interested in your company and this is what I want to do. So it doesn't mean an acceptance from your end, but it actually means that you have an offer. A lot of startups use letter of intent from different venture funds to increase their valuation, which I would not say is very ethical, but then again, that's how market works. So there is again a due diligence report. Most of the investors get a due diligence report. So due diligence report is not just on the businesses. These are also on the background of the startup founders and a lot of things as in where from they have done the funding, how scalable their model is and things like that. So next we come to share subscription agreement. I will deal with both these share subscription agreement and shareholders agreement in the same way, but then they are a little different. So One, we have shared subscription agreements. So that basically means that you actually have an agreement with the company. How do you subscribe to its shares? So this will only employ when you have a private limited company. This will not happen once you are actually running a partnership. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So coming to shareholders agreement, what is this? So shareholders between themselves might have an agreement. And existing shareholders of the startup, thereby defining a common understanding between them with respect to the economics of the deal, the extent of the control, that is, rights and privileges of the incoming investors, the duties and liabilities of the founders, the reserved matters, the terms governing the future fundraising, the anti-dilution measures, and the liquidation preferences of the investors. So these things can be covered in many other agreements that we have discussed. But then yes, if it comes to shareholders agreement, that is what it talks about. So when we are talking about a contract which you are entering into, how you can minimize the risk and what do we do? So clearly identify the parties to the contract. Contract Act is very simple in this, that a stranger to a contract cannot sue. So that means that if there is a contract between party A and party B and a party C is aggrieved out of this contract, the party C cannot sue because it's not a signatory to the contract. So whom to keep in the contract and whom to absolutely take away from the contract is very important. Clearly identify the scope of services. Whatever the services might be, it might be your intellectual property, it might be a patented product that you are actually giving to the other party. Everything should be in black and white. So let's say that it's a consortium agreement between you and a person or you and a company for providing services for a limited period of time. So then what are your responsibilities as far as that project is concerned? Because it is a project based contract. Ensure all aspects of the contract are properly executed and documented, including attachments. A lot of times I have seen that founders, what they do is they will possibly copy from some template for saving some money or cutting some corners. And then the agreements will have annexure A, annexure B. And at the end, they have just deleted the annexures because that were of no use to them. So make it a point to actually read the agreements or contracts again and again so that you do not make these kind of mistakes. And at the end, the opposite party or somebody with some motives end up actually putting annexures which were not the part of original contract, and that becomes a part of bone of contention basically. So try to insert a reasonable limitation of liability clause that meets state guidelines for proper notice. Typically, this limitation of liability needs to be in all capital letters, bold, in a different size font than the surrounding type. So limitation of liability is very important because most of the businesses do not reach a point where they will get seed capital, or most of the businesses do not get to a point where the venture capitalists will invest in them. So you need to limit your liability so that the losses that are shared by the businesses are at max resultant to are commensurate to the profit that you are earning and are not more than that. So giving an example how it works. So let's presume for a moment that you ended up being in a business which was making a special kind of a comb which will grow hair, and you ended up selling 1 lakh combs, and the profit was 10 rupees per comb, so you ended up getting 10 lakh rupees, but you had 4 partners, so you just got 2.5 lakh rupees. But the company is sued by a person who says that his hair have not grown and he has low confidence because he has promoted your company's product to a lot of his friends, and now he's facing a lot of heat from them. So he sues you for 20 lakh rupees. Now you have just earned 2.5 lakh rupees as an investor, but the company is being sued for 20 lakh rupees and the overall profit of the company is just 10 lakh rupees. So this limitation of liability will save you from that. There are other aspects, but maybe we can deal with that in question and answer. So coming to the 6th point, understand the nature of the warranties or the representations that may be in the contract. So once you say that you will do this work, you should also make provisions for what if you are not able to do that work, because it's important that you understand that not all the times are good. So coming back to the 7th point, be clear in the contract as to who may or may not rely on the professional services, particularly disclaiming third parties from relying on such services. So when you make a contract, make it tight knit as already said. So not just mention who will be party to this contract and who will require these services, also rule out the people who will not require these services. Coming to the 8th point, understand exactly what insurance coverage does and does not provide. Read the policy and do not allow anything in the contract that might later conflict with the insurance coverage. So there might be business level insurances, there might be human resource insurances, there might be group insurances that you will be requiring. I will not go into detail of this. Why? Because most of the people who are here will possibly be not at this juncture. We are just starting the businesses. Once that is done, maybe we can have a separate session on just insurances. But generally speaking, it's very important to read all the warranties terms before you sign any contract and or agreement, and that applies to insurance contracts too. Yeah. So coming to the 9th point, when the contract calls for follow-up documentation. So most of the consortium agreements, most of the memorandum of understandings clearly state that this agreement will lead into a partnership. This agreement or memorandum of understanding will lead into a company. So if the contract requires a claim to be submitted within a certain time, follow the procedure. Let's presume for a moment that if it says that we will form an LLP within 6 months, even if you cannot form an LLP within 6 months, do make a document which says that you cannot make an LLP and get all the partners to sign that document. Coming to the 10th point, do not just sign the contract, read it. I have already mentioned that point. I am not going to be repetitive because it will get boring. Okay. So mandatory clauses in a contract. Yeah. What, Chandrika, do you want me to discuss these? Because I think we are running out of time here.
So you can share your points on this. I think it's an important thing.
Okay.
You have 10
So,
minutes. Please.
So there are only 4 kinds of contracts that I have talked about here, but then there can be many kinds of contracts as we have already mentioned. So joint venture agreements, agreements with the co-founders are the most important kind of agreements that you will possibly face everywhere. So I have dealt with almost 10 points earlier. Those are important, but then specific to these, what will be the ones that are important? Name and type of the entity. It's very important to keep the name different from your brands. So let's presume for a moment that if your software is it's called Microsoft, do not name your entity Microsoft. Keep it different from the company's name. Okay. Mechanism for initial funding, share capital and debt. So how you are going to initially fund your startup? Will it be a share capital based? Will it be debt based? Or you are using your own funds? That has to be clearly stated. Drafting of charter documents. So that I've already dealt, but these are memorandum of articles of association or amendments there too. Management of the entity, composition of the board of directors, decision making at the board shareholder level, and how are the meetings conducted. So once we make memorandum of associations or articles of association, it's very important to understand how the whole company works. So if you're a director, how will the meetings take place? How will the directors be informed? Where will the meetings take place? Will they be e-format? Will they be non-e format? Will they be physical? It's very important to keep these things in the purview. So a lot of companies have been having in-person meetings of their boards, and these past 6 months have been very difficult, and all of them are rushing to registrar of companies to change this in their memorandum of articles and articles of association. So sharing of profits and dividends, I will like to add something here. It's not just important to share the profits and dividends. It's very important to clearly state how and who will share the losses as well. So let's presume for a moment that you have a company and there is an operations department. One of the startup founder deals with the operations when something bad happens, and operations is absolutely responsible for doing that. So is it important that he should share all the losses? And let's presume for a moment that if you're the operations or the fall guy at the moment, your liability will be limited by just this clause. Confidentiality, we have again talked about non-disclosure agreements. I would like to talk about non-compete as well, which are again mentioned below. Termination and exit mechanisms. As I've already mentioned, that it's very important that all of you not just talk about the continuity of the business, what happens when the business have to be wound up. Arbitration and dispute resolution. I suggest to all my clients, I'll suggest to every founder here, always take a look, a clear-cut look from a very deft professional as to how arbitration and dispute resolution is dealt. Always have an alternative dispute resolution clause in your agreement, whatever the agreement might be. Keep it in such a fashion that you don't have to rush to the place to conduct the arbitration. It is done in ODR mode, that is online dispute resolution. So with the convenience of your home, you can possibly have a dispute resolution professional. I do a lot of arbitrations as well as a mediator as well. And the rulings of or the awards of the arbitral tribunal are binding on both the parties. And this you can get in very, very fast mode. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to even leave your place. So non-compete and non-solicitation we have already talked about. There's a lot of bad blood when it comes to startups. Sometimes the founders, being young or inexperienced, do end up fighting with each other. And what happens is that a founder actually breaks off and wants to start his own company. In case that happens, he can be bound by non-compete and he can be bound by non-solicitation, by not solicitation your existing clients. Now, governing law. So I have seen a lot of arbitration clause and a lot of agreements which are not clear on what is governing law. It's very important that if there are companies which are of multiple jurisdictions, you clearly state which state's laws, which country's laws will be applicable. We come to the second kind of HR agreements with the employees. So for formal clauses of offer of employment and acceptance of the terms of offer by the employee, always maintain a separate section. Even if you do not have an HR, do maintain a formal set of emails and agreements with the employees. Doesn't matter you have an HR or not, do get your all employment contracts vetted by a professional, because once the problems start arising and your employees start going to labor courts, you will end up investing a lot of time and money as well on labor court. Scope of services and duties and responsibilities. This is a huge issue with the startups. A lot of people leave because their responsibilities and duties are increased. Even if you are doing that, do make it a point to key in as a supplementary to the original employment contract. Yeah. So then is remuneration. Make it clear that whatever is being given to them is clearly mentioned in the contract. And even if you are making a change in these things, just like a lot of startups have done during COVID, do drop an email and take their assent before that. Non-compete, non-solicitation, the same things that can be done by startup co-founders can be done by your senior employees as well, or even by junior employees. Term of employment and termination provisions, including age of retirement. I'm not sure how valid age of retirement for a startup is, considering the fact that most of them are under 5 years of age. Term of employment and termination process is very important. Term of employment is again fine, because most of the times the startups do keep on churning employees, and employees keep on finding better pastures and they keep on leaving. So that is fine. But then when it comes to termination, just like exit provisions of a partnership deed, make it absolutely clear how much notice is there. In lieu of notice, if the employee doesn't serve a notice, what is the clause, how will he be paying, and things like that. Process of settlement of disputes, again come to ADR. I will request everybody whomsoever doesn't need can get in touch with me later on as well. I keep on frequently vetting just the dispute resolution clauses. It's very important to have exit clauses and dispute resolution clauses crystal clear in the agreement or contract that you are signing. Again, the governing law is very important, because your employees in the current situation might be sitting absolutely in different jurisdictions, might even be sitting in different countries. It's very important that you take heed to that. So non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements, possibly the most important agreements that you will deal with, and in the beginning of a startup's lifespan. So one need to carefully analyze such information and put under this definition what is confidential information. It is very important as to what confidential information is, and this clause is dealt with very clearly. Why? Because the information that is already in public domain, maybe spread by you or your website, is already not a confidential information. Some of the non-disclosure and non-compete agreements make it a point to not cover this aspect, and then it becomes bad at the end of the whole thing. Terms and conditions of use of confidential information. So it's not just that you actually stop everybody from using your confidential information. Maybe you will have certain set of people whom despite having signed the non-disclosure and non-compete and NDA will have to use that information every day. Make it a time to carve out exceptions to the clause so that they can use it. Surrender of confidential information once the termination completes. So this happens frequently again in startups, that the companies do not pay the employees. Why? Because the employee has already leaked certain information. Always remember, I keep on telling to startup founders as well, that doesn't matter how much money you will lose by paying them, but always get a formal sign up and handover of all the information that your employees have used, because leak of the information can be a valuable asset to your competitors, and information asymmetry often gives you an edge in the industry. Coming to the survival of conditions for confidentiality, after expiry of their term of NDA. A lot of the startups make it a point to put a moratorium of 1 year or 2 years, even post the expiry of the NDA. I particularly am not very fond of these clauses, but if you want, you can keep it for 6 months to 1 year. If you keep the conditions for a longer period of time, you make it a possibility that it will be breached. So it has to be a fine balance between your interest as well as the interest of the employee or the co-founder, whomsoever you are signing this with. Conditions of care and diligence while handling confidential information. A lot of information is leaked by people so that they can gain an edge, or they can actually harm the company. Make these conditions very watertight so that everybody sees the information that they are leaking. Permissible disclosures, we have already talked about. Dispute resolution, we are talking again and again. And maybe we can have a separate session for dispute resolution as well. Governing law, we have already talked about. So I come to the last slide. Second last slide, sorry. So then we come to consultant agreements. So who are consultants? Consultant can be co-founders as well, whom you hire to pay them money. Consultants can be your friends who want to work with you, but not on a full-time basis. Consultants can be freelancers. So gig economy has ensured that a lot of people work not full-time with us, but they are doing a lot of gigs at the same time and working with a lot of companies at the same time. There are freelancers whom I'm seeing working with 10 companies at the same time. So following are the important clauses. Basically, formal clause for offer and acceptance, which is very similar to the employment agreement. Scope of work, duties and responsibilities, which we have already talked about. Fee be fixed, fee or lump sum or combination of both. So this is again a very, very common hassle that startups face, that they end up paying the freelancers and then the freelancers do not work. I will suggest that you incorporate clauses like 50% payment at the beginning and 50% payment at the end. The more ethical you be with the freelancers, I think the more ethical the freelancers will be with you. It works both ways, it doesn't work one way. Incentives, so if your company is giving any extra incentive to a freelancer, please make it a point that consultant agreements encapsulate it in clear language. Place of work, a lot of freelancers are being forced to work in the offices, and then later bad blood happens because they are working with a lot of companies and they cannot come to office. So make it a point to clearly mention the place of work and from which they will be working. Provisions of off days as well. We Indians do not at all cherish personal time. I personally feel that this problem has just floated during COVID. People are working. I myself have worked more than 16 hours a day. And this is not something good for your employees, for a consultant, or even co-founders. So as much as you will like to work, do not burn out, and keep provision of off days for yourself and for everybody employed. Manner of dealing with proprietary and confidential information and data protection. This is absolutely similar to what we have already discussed. I will not like to go in detail again. So yeah, so there is one more thing that I would like to deal with. One is code of conduct and standards for HR, non-discrimination. This is for slightly bigger organizations, maybe with more than 10 employees. Policy prohibiting smoking and consumption of alcohol, drugs, and other illegal items. Confidentiality, harassment and bullying, including policy on prevention of sexual harassment. This is very important that you have at least have once a training on POSH training, which is called grievance redressal mechanism for any employee. See, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and it's always important because you are small right now, but you will not be small all the time. So if your team is small, it's very important that you go ahead and have a one-to-one word and have a redressal mechanism. Disciplinary procedure. So in case somebody raises an issue, disciplinary issue, how do you deal with the problem that is being raised by the employee or the co-founder or anybody? Policy on probation and confirmation to employment. This is again very important. We see in gig economy and startups that a lot of employees are young, maybe fresh out of college. They have very little or no work experience or office discipline. They end up giving commitments which they cannot do with their colleges or already existing commitments. So you have to be very careful while taking somebody on board. I always carve out a probation policy for the company if I am drafting their employment agreement. Yeah. So Chandrika, I think I've covered most of the aspects as could be in as less time. Now we can maybe open the session for questions.
Yes, sir. Tanvi?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Prakhar. This was very, very comprehensive, and given the time constraint, I think we covered almost everything. And I think we can have a more engaging discussions once people bring in their questions. So thank you so much for covering this.
Thanks, Tanvi. Thanks.
Okay, Man, so if you can take the questions forward, we can go one by one from the questions in the chat. And after that, if anyone has any question related to what was discussed today and its applicability in your venture, please feel free to unmute or write it in the chat.
Yeah, sure. So we already have one question in the chat.
Yeah.
From
Man, I think I lost you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll meanwhile start with the first question that we received. So this is from Deepak. He's saying, can we choose the governing law to be of some other country as well if we have an online startup mechanism where most of the customers are from other countries but the registered office is in Mumbai?
Deepak, are very interesting questions. Most of the time, let's presume I'll take GDPR in question. So even if your company is registered in Mumbai or Delhi and you have clients of, let's say, Europe, you have to be GDPR compliant because you will be storing their data, you will be dealing with them. And it's absolutely essential to follow up some laws like GDPR. Only very advanced countries like Europe and UK have these laws. None of the other countries have these laws, but then it's essential that you are compliant of GDPR and other such data laws at least. Yeah.
Hope that answered your question, Deepak. You can unmute as well if you want to discuss something. Okay, so meanwhile we can continue. So there's Santosh who asked if they can get a copy of the mandatory clauses of the contracts.
See, this is again a question that I'm frequently asked. A lot of chartered accountants and CSS keep on messaging and calling me asking for a template. There is no template, so to say, for every contract, for every memorandum of understanding. The template varies. I'll give you an example. So there was a client who started recently a podcast, and in during the lockdown. By the way, they started in April, and they got a funding of 1 crore rupees in somewhere in May or July. So these podcasts will hire sound artists and people who are already in the business of storytelling, using their own motivational speeches and all. So they asked me for a artist retention agreement and or services agreement as we call it. And while services agreement can run in maybe 15, 20, 50 pages, but we understand that artists mostly don't understand and don't read and do not have an understanding of such things. And they might get taken aback by the sheer volume of the agreement. So I made just a 3-page agreement for them, which covered everything from their finances to the trademarks to the limiting of liability to the exit and sign up and how their products will be co-branded and co-promoted. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Prakhar. And after that, we have a question from Saurajit. He's asking, we have received a copyright certificate of our startup idea, and he wants to know if this copyright is applicable outside India or just in India.
So copyrights are mostly governed by local laws. Every country has a separate copyright regime. So you will possibly have to get yourself registered in that jurisdiction also. Also, let me clarify a simple thing that even if you are registered in India, it's not very easy unless you scale and you have a lot of money to hire lawyers abroad. It's not very easy to defend your rights in different jurisdictions. It's easier to defend your rights in Indian jurisdictions. Yeah.
Right. Then we have a question from Prasenjit, who's asking, what should we include in an employment agreement of a startup in the nightlife industry, which will be operated through an app or website? I think this is a very particular question. Prasenjit, if you have something, in general to ask, you can unmute yourself.
The question is not exactly clear to me, Tanvi. Maybe if you can shed some more light.
Yeah, so Prasenjit, your question isn't very clear. If you want, you can unmute yourself.
Is he here?
Yeah.
Maybe you can unmute him.
Okay, meanwhile, we can move to the next. Hi, Prasenjit, are you here?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Prasenjit.
Yeah, hello, sir. Actually, my question is, while starting an startup, if the industry wants to proceed in a nightlife industry and it will be operated through website or application, suppose like an event management industry who has started a startup. So, what are the compliances that which have to be followed?
See, compliances, first of all, the state in which you are, you'll have to see, rather not even the state. These are city specific directions which are governed by local municipal laws. So can you run a business at night or not is very important. You need to inform the local police stations. Mostly there are compliances for that. Second, most of the jurisdictions do not allow working of women late in night till the time you have specific security. You already know, at least in Delhi NCR, the rapes that have happened. So the compliances involve that if you are retaining a woman later than 6 or 7 p.m., you give them a drop back home, and this taxi should have a separate guard who will protect her as well. These are some of the compliances that you will have. Apart from that, POSH training is absolutely mandatory. Having a POSH compliant office environment is mandatory. Having a POSH committee is mandatory as well. These are just some of the concerns that can arise here.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Yeah, Tanvi, this side Tanay. I'll ask the question directly.
Hi,
so we have an IT organization. So I just want to understand what are the kind of things which we have to make a copyright as per the legal laws. I mean, just like for an IT, what would be the things which needs to be done? That is the first question. And the second question is, if you have any client and they want a demo of a product, means that is something related to means demo sample of that product. So we that client is not at the service agreement stage. So at that time, what we have to do it means NDA should be done, or any other agreement should be done that they won't use our product to any other things. And what kind of agreement should be done at that stage? So these are the two questions. And the third one, if we go,
Let me answer first these two before I forget.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you see, it depends upon at what stage is your product or your code or your software is. If it's a ready-made product, you can obviously go ahead, get it copyrighted, and not just copyrighted, you can get trademarks on that as well. So yes, I always keep on encouraging, if you have trust on your team, if you have trust on your guts, if you think that it's a scalable model and it is needed in the industry which is not catered by anybody else, please go ahead, protect your intellectual property rights all the time. It needs some money, but please do it. It's important. Second, whenever you are giving a demo, as I have already said, use the same thumb rule. If there is a person whom you actually expect to use the software and still, or any of your product that you are developing, in which you have spent a lot of midnight oil, I would suggest that you go ahead and ask them to sign an NDA before you get them to a stage of signing the service level agreement. Also, if they are not ready to sign NDA, you can simply drop an email asking them not to disclose and covering on the conditions and take their assent on that. In case that they are not ready to sign these agreements and not ready to give an assent even on the email, rest assured that they have some nefarious designs in their mind. Yeah, please come to your third question now.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
this is answered well.
Yeah. Your question, my question is answered. So that email assent is it's okay. Means to take it on email, it's fine. Means
Yeah, because there are a lot of founders here. Let me make it very clear. Agreement or contracts are not just written on a piece of paper, signed and stamped. Then only it becomes even a perception. Let's presume for a moment that Tanvi here has paid me 10 lakh rupees for just speaking here today. And she has just had a phone call with me and nothing else. And she has gone ahead and distributed everywhere that Supreme Court advocate Prakhar Dixit will come and speak on this certain aspect. And she loses her clientele. She can sue me without even having a simple written document. And how can she sue me? Because she is tagging me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and she is tagging me as well. So my conduct shows that I am complicit in that agreement, and I am going to give this lecture on this date. So I will have to prove that this agreement was not actually between me and Tanvi. Yeah. So I hope that makes it clear, right?
yeah, that is clear.
Yeah.
The last question is this: as of now, for India, that is we can do it service agreement with a client. If there is any client outside India, so is there any specific law for that or any kind of a specific agreement for that? For example, for a digital healthcare things in Europe and all such places, they want GDPR compliances to be done. So is there anything to be specific to fashion industry or?
See, when it comes to GDPR, I think that if you're storing any data, rather the kind of penalties that GDPR has, I would suggest you become GDPR and compliant, even if it's really expensive. And why I say this is that even if by mistake, let's say you end up storing data on your computer of a European citizen, you are still liable under GDPR.
Okay.
So do not take any chances. Go ahead, get yourself compliances. When it comes to jurisdiction, make governing law as India, but then it will not absolve you of liabilities under GDPR. Neither compliances. It will not make them any easier for you. Yeah.
Fine. Tanvi, I just want of yours, sir, to have an in-depth discussion with you. Thank you.
So Dikshit ji, one request.
Sure, sir.
Actually, sir, to be frank, I'm speaking from farmer007.com.
Okay.
Actually,
so what's your
sir,
name?
this is Srinivas.
Namaskar, sir.
Mastaji, to be frank, I noticed some key points from this session, but to be frank, this is a big ocean. So, at same time, the startup or entrepreneur journey successful stories will be the glorious. Same time, there is a negative shade. It is not that much easy. So, we sincerely request you to, this is a big ocean. We don't want to dip in that. With your help, we want to make success. So, like in our software side, we have an option that AMC, annual maintenance charges like that. If you have that kind of with the, I'm requesting same thing with the Tanvi madam also with the Supreme Incubator. Just we will express about our idea, and while interacting with the other persons, we will interact personally. But while doing the agreements or something, whatever it may be on paper, we can't erase. So, whatever we want to go into agreement, we will take some time, and before that time, we will interact with you. It is the best way, I think, because in the same way we did not expertise in this sector. So other lawyers or other outer people may be more expertise. Then they can treat us. So we don't want to go into deep with this session. With your support, just we will understand each other, but we don't want to sign on the paper. So with your help, we want to move forward. Is there any annual maintenance charges that kind of service from you? We are happy to share with you, sir.
Srinivas, if I get it correctly, you possibly want to hire me for your company because you think that you have legal issues. Is that what you want?
I don't have right now, but further in the future, definitely I'm going to face.
True.
So that is the reason only I'm asking that. This is a big question. It is not. If I feel that I have attended one session, two sessions, I am expertise in this session. This is the wrong way, I think. So
Srinivas ji, I have spent almost a decade practicing, and I have been studying law for almost 20 years. Obviously, experience comes with practicing the vocation. I'm sure that you know more about your website than I will ever know. And I'm sure that a lot of startup founders who are here know more about their domain than I know about their domain. But then professionals, experienced professionals like you who are being brought to this platform by Supreme Incubator, and even lawyers are being brought for just this aspect, that you gain insights through professionals. Yeah. So yes, Supreme Incubator Tanvi is here and Chandrika is here. Both can get you in touch. I think that is what he asked Tanvi, right?
Yes.
Because to be frankly, I'm saying, sir, we are always fed up with our platforms only, sir. It is very big issue to us. These chart account rules, this everything. If we started learning, it is another ocean. So there may be chance to fail. So that is the reason we sincerely request you.
Srinivas ji, we hire professionals to make our work easy. I have not had a single client of mine who will say that, sir, I do not understand what you have drafted, or you have actually sent a document to me without consulting me. In any profession, company secretary, ICWA, even engineers, you share your initial designs, you share your initial draft, you tell them what you're working on. That is why clients have hired, because they are not experts in the field. That is why experts like me charge money. We charge money for making your life easy, not for making your life difficult. If experts make the life difficult, why will people hire them?
Yes, you are right, sir.
Maybe we can go ahead with the next question.
Yeah. Yes. So we have a question from Smith, who's asking which court of law has the primary jurisdiction to deal over a conflict between partners on clauses on a contract or agreement.
Okay. Yeah. So Sumit, jurisdiction will depend upon the pecuniary value of the conflict. So in different states, mostly the cutoff is 1 crore. So if the amount that you are claiming is above 1 crore, then it will go to High Court. If the amount is less than 1 crore, then it will go to District Court. Then again, there is a separate Commercial Courts Act. So you can file a case of specific performance or dues under Commercial Courts Act, which work in tandem with which work under district courts and move faster. Then again, if it's a private limited company, you can file a suit in NCLT, that is National Companies Law Tribunal. The forum depends upon how your legal professional guides you. But coming to me, I will suggest that we go under Commercial Courts Act if it's a commercial issue, or we go to NCLT if a company is involved. Yeah.
Okay, hope that cleared the question for you, Smith. We'll move to the next one. This is covered. We have a question from Piku who's asking, what is the maximum compensation which can be sought against the breach of an agreement? The amount mentioned in the agreement itself, or the cost required to resettle the business according to market value at that time of conflict?
See, there is no thumb rule per se. Generally, what we do is we put the exact loss that has happened and the secondary losses that have happened to the company. We add them up and put it. But most of the time, the founders also find it decapitating because there is a 2.5% court fee that you have to apply whenever you want a person to pay your money. So that is a bar. So if you ask for 1 crore rupees, 2.5 lakh rupees court fee is what you will have to pay right away before your suit is even filed. So yes, you can ask for any amount of money, but then you'll have to pay court fees. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prakhar. We have another question from Deepak, who's asking, if I manage to get an angel investor, which is better to trade with them, equity shares, preference shares, or should I build a limited liability partnership? And what are the compliances that he should look into regarding investments, if he should get in, to check SEBI or FEMA? This is his question.
I think the question is not very clear.
So I think the first part is that he's asking about the instrument, generally which instrument is better, common stock or preference shares. And then he's asking if he should be looking into any compliances from SEBI or FEMA.
See, this changes from startup to startup. Some people just want to encash their shares and just go to another one. In that case, you will be looking for an investor who will hold up longer. You can give them preferential shares or equity shares. Second kind of startup founders want to keep the control to them. In that case, you can even take it as a loan, or yeah, that is how it is. It changes from person to person, from startup to startup, how they want to bring in more people, how they want to incorporate more people. Yeah. And then, or should I build a limited liability partnership? I always suggest that if it's a drawing board idea, maybe you can start up with a registered partnership or LLP instead of going for a private limited company, which will have more compliances. You will end up paying more money to the chartered accountants and company secretaries for that. Yeah, so you can save money there. So the second part of the question is, what is the compliances I have to look into regarding investors? Should I look at SEBI regulations or FEMA? No, when it comes to Companies Act is the sole guiding principle for Companies Act. You don't have to look for SEBI regulations or FEMA till the time you are not a listed company. You don't have to worry about that. That will come at a later stage, much later stage. He asked a follow-up questions further. Could you please explain further on GDPR compliances? What are they and what's the governing authority? See, this is a point of discussion for a separate topic altogether. Maybe we can have a separate discussion someday with the permission of Tanvi and Chandrika, and we can just talk about GDPR compliances. I'd like to skip this question for now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this is another question which is very important, and we have another question from Sorjit, which is similar to this one only. He's asking, what legal actions can we take if a user violates the in-app agreement? Now, a lot of times when we download applications, there are in-app agreements itself that we click accept on, without even reading the entire document. So Sorjit and their team, they are also developing an application in which they want to do a similar agreement with their users. And their question is that if such a user is violating any action, any such agreement, what action can they take?
See, violations can be of many types. So violations can be like, they might try to hang your app or try to hack it. In that case, it comes under IT Act as well as IPC. It will be punishable under both the acts. Second violation can be they actually try to copy your app. In that case, again, you can go to a commercial court and you can ask for damages. They can try to, what else can they do? I think that is pretty much it. These are two kind of acts which will protect you, and you can take actions under civil as well as criminal aspect depending upon the kind of in-app agreement that they are violating and the kind of violations that you are facing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope that answered your question, Saurji. So Shubham, I believe you were if your question isn't very clear, if you'd like to unmute and continue it, Shubham Jaiswal.
Yeah. Hello. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi, Shubham.
Currently, we are going to sign an MOU with the college in Malaysia where they'll onboard their students onto our platform for giving quizzes and assessing their few free features. And then we can upsell the students with few other features that we can charge them from, right? So I wanted to know what other contracts that we can sign, or is MOU sufficient enough for this thing?
Shubham, the answer to your question will be dependent upon, do you have a presence in Malaysia? Like, do you
No.
have an entity registered in Malaysia?
No, we are currently registered in India only.
Yeah. So MOU is pretty much what you can do just to safeguard your interest. Maybe you can put a specific arbitration clause and a strict one with the seat and language very clearly specified. Most of the arbitral awards are now executable just like decrees by court in courts of law. So they are at par with the courts of law order. Yeah, so MOU, a tight-knit MOU should work for now. Maybe if the revenue increases, you can think of something else. Maybe even starting a company in Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And one more question is,
Please go ahead.
like, we share the content of YouTube on our platform, on our website, okay? So is there any copyright law that we are violating by sharing those content if it is publicly available?
See, if you are not monetizing it, it's fine. If you are monetizing it, you will have to take permission from the creator and you will have to give due credits to the creator as well.
So we are not, just to be clear, we are not monetizing the content, but we are monetizing the algorithm that recommends the content. So can we do it without like having to inform or take permission from the content creator?
Shubham, I think that this question we'll have to delve deep after seeing the contents of your MOU, after seeing the kind of arrangement that you are looking for with the Malaysian university. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question do we have?
We don't have any connected question in the chat. If anybody would like to ask anything, you can raise your hand or unmute directly. Okay. Yeah, Mohammed has raised his hand. Mohammed, please feel free to unmute.
I would, Tanvi, can you please have a quick poll? I just wanted to see how many of startup founders actually found it useful.
Sure. We can do a poll. Just give me a second. I'll set it up. Meanwhile, Mohammed, if you have any question. So Mohammed has just sent a message in the chat. He's asking, we needed to draft working partner arrangement for our B2B e-commerce startup. Kindly help me. So I think this is also something very particular to your venture, Mohammed. We are only taking questions which are generic.
True.
You can take this up, we can connect you to Prakhar if needed, and you can take that up on an individual basis as per the process, how it goes.
Anybody who's interested, I'll just drop my number in the chat box. I will also speak it loud. You can ask it from Tanvi as well. Tanvi has
Sir,
it.
I'll do that for you.
Sure. That would be great. That would be great. Yeah. Any other question that we have? I think we are done here.
Yeah, I think we are done. So everyone, if you can quickly vote on the poll, how you found the session. And if you have any feedback, you can write in the chat. It's always helpful for the presenters to get feedback on their session. I believe Prakhar, you're able to see the.
I can see. I can see. Quite heartening that everybody could actually bear me for more than 1 hour.
Yeah, this is a time of very frequent webinars, but
Yeah, it's
um, but comprehensive webinars such as the one we had today, I think they're always helpful for everyone and anyone. Thanks, Chandrika. Chandrika has sent the contact information in the chat. You can take note of the same to get in touch with Prakhar. Okay, so with that, I think we can conclude today's session, Prakhar. We won't want to take more of your time. Thank you so much for an enlightening session. It was very,
Thanks a lot, Tanvi.
to just take a bird's eye view of everything and yet get to know all the important stuff there is to know about this very, very essential topic. And very much looking forward to having continued engagement with you with the early stage startups, for your advice and support.
Sure, Tanvi. Sure, sure. Thanks a lot for the nice questions that you asked, and thanks a lot for hearing out these important aspects. I know that a lot of webinars are happening, and it's difficult to sit for more than 1 hour. I'll not take more time. I'll thank Tanvi again, who has invited, and I'll thank Chandrika for coordinating everything, and I'll also like to thank Manhu for coordinating this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.